that he could make things happen out there, and they went on to have big-time success winning the OMHAs this year, so that was a big accomplishment for that Halton squad.
A guy who's seen plenty of creative hockey over the years and seems to get more and more creative is Chris Peters with Flow Hockey, and certainly sees both the junior side leading into the NHL's the prospects and also games in the NHL, and he joins us now. Chris, good to see you. Happy Saturday, happy OHL draft weekend. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. It's great to be with you, and yeah, I mean, this is a really exciting time of year. I think everybody is fired up for the postseason as we're underway here. And boy, I mean, the draft seems to get closer and closer too for the NHL, and obviously a lot of young fellas getting their dreams made to this weekend here in the OHL.
Well, you think about it, Chris, this time of the year, you just mentioned it, and it doesn't matter if it's the pro level, the junior level. I mean, NHL playoffs around the corner, the OHL right in the thick of it right now, the World Under-18s, the drafts, a lot to keep track of right now. But at this time of the year, there's a lot of players who can improve their stock. Doesn't matter if it's OHL or NHL draft. A lot of people looking to see what they do down the stretch or in these meaningful games.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think you don't have to look too far in the past to see how postseason performances have helped players. I think Easton Cowan is a tremendous example of that, a guy whose playoffs really set the table for him to be a first-round draft pick in the NHL. And so, you know, that's important too. And as you mentioned, the Under-18 Worlds is one of the great scouting events of the year. It's in the United States this year too, so it's, you know, you'll have even more of an NHL contingent just because it's so close and easy to get to. And obviously there will be a number of players that OHL fans are familiar with, but also get a chance to see many players from throughout the world and guys that you might see in import drafts and others as well, as certainly we've seen more Americans selected here in the priority selection as well. So I mean, I think there's a lot of really great things that these players can do in this time of year to put themselves on the map. And while it's just one data point in the whole evaluation process, that's the thing that I think I always try to remind people is that, you know, you are trying to look at the full picture, but playing your best hockey now means a lot, and it's a real opportunity for these players to show what they're all about.
Last time, of course, the Under-18s were in Texas back in 2021. Team Canada had that super team there coming out of the pandemic and won gold. And, of course, NHL scouts were salivating at that one. And I'm sure they're going to be very excited to see the teams, of course, Team USA, Team Canada, the international squads. We've seen the preliminary roster from Hockey Canada come out today. I've got to think there's going to be a lot of eyes on a lot of players.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I mean, obviously, you know, we saw that Michael Misa was invited but unable to participate. That's obviously disappointing. I think, you know, everybody wants to see the best players in these events, but at the same time, there's so many other players. And there's actually a lot of underagers on Canada's roster as well, guys that will be draft eligible in 2026. Which I think makes it even more exciting at times. We saw Matthew Schaefer really come into the forefront last year at the Under-18 Worlds and see what he was, you know, kind of setting the table for what this season was going to be. Obviously, unfortunate injury this year, but still, the amount of views that we got of him, everybody kind of still believes that there's a chance he's going number one with what he's done. And I think that Under-18 Worlds performance really kind of set the table for that. So there's that for sure. And I think, you know, you look back at that team, that Canadian team, that was right coming out of the pandemic. You know, a lot of players had played short seasons, but for many people it was their first chance to see Connor Bedard. Matvei Michkov was in that tournament. You know, it was one of, I was calling the games for Hockey TV at that point. And I was just kind of amazed. And I've been at many Under-18 World Championships, but that one has to go down as one of my favorites just because, you know, we saw Bedard, we saw Michkov, we saw all these tremendous players that came through, you know, and it was such a fun time. So I'm really looking forward to that event. You know, I think Canada has an excellent opportunity in front of them to, you know, go and try to defend the gold medal that they won last year. USA is going to be a strong team. I think Sweden's going to be a very strong team as well. You know, it's a little different these days without Russia in there in terms of the depth of the talent, but still, it's one of the best tournaments that you can ask for, and at this time of year, it's especially important.
And such a unique tournament in the sense of CHL playoffs are still going on, so who Hockey Canada can bring can be limited depending who's still playing. So you speak of those underagers, and there's players that are invited to this Canada roster from last year's OHL draft. But I just want to go back to Matthew Schaefer for a moment, because you said something there that we've heard a few times here today. The fact that despite the limited viewings, it doesn't seem it's hurt his stock at all. I can't really recall a player that has that same situation. Typically, players that miss a ton of time, it hurts them.
Yeah, it does, and I think that does speak to the specialness of Matthew Schaefer, because I don't think it's just about the playing ability. The playing ability is one thing, and he is excellent. And for the 4 periods that he played at the World Junior Championship, he was clearly Canada's best defenseman and maybe their best player, period. And that sticks in your mind. But the thing that I think most teams are amazed by, the maturity. Obviously, he's been through a lot of adversity in his young life, but he continues to battle through it. And I think he's just the kind of guy that teams want around their team. I just think they would want a player of his character, of his maturity, and then obviously his playing ability all there. I think sometimes when you have the first overall pick, it is you're trying to build for the future and build a superstar. Maybe that's the pick where you kind of throw a little bit of caution to the wind. You're able to gamble because you say, if we can't miss on this pick, right? But we want to be smart about it. He's the kind of guy where he feels like he's worth the gamble because all of the times he has been healthy enough to play, he's been one of the best players on the ice. And, it's amazing. Michael Misa had this incredible season, and he's still very much in the conversation, and certainly teams are going to be considering him. But I just think that it speaks to the importance of a number 1 defenseman, the capabilities and the all-around game that Matthew Schaefer has, and then that character component as well. This is a player that teams are really, really excited to see again, but also to potentially have in their system for a long time to come.
Chris, as you look at this year's group from the Ontario Hockey League for the NHL entry draft, who jumps out to you maybe just below the obvious top 3?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys, obviously, and one of the guys I'm excited about is Kashawn Aitchison. I think a lot of people have talked about him as kind of like that next tier of players, and in the Schaefer is far and away the best defenseman. There's really no one close. But then you kind of have a throwback player in Aitchison and a guy that is physical, has some nastiness to him, and then also this season proved that he can produce. So I think that's certainly a big factor, and that's probably outside of that that top 5, maybe top 10, top 15. You're going a little bit further down the list, but those are the players where you can really make a difference in your prospect system when you hit on those kinds of guys. I think a lot of NHL teams are intrigued by that player. I mean, and we've obviously talked all about, guys like Porter Martone and Malcolm Spence for years, guys that have been more familiar to us, but then you have newer players come in this year like Brady Martin and others. And so, I think there's a lot of excitement about the Canadian class this year. I think that we saw there have been years where maybe it was a big Swedish class, a big U.S. class that kind of cut into Canada's numbers a little bit in the first round. This year, I think it's going to kind of be a little bit more like what we're used to seeing. It's going to be a very heavy, CHL influence in those probably first 15 picks, with a lot of OHL influence as well.
Well, one thing we haven't really talked about too much today is goaltending. And when you mentioned about that Canada U18 roster, Jack Ivankovic listed there, the Brampton Steelheads netminder, highly touted for the draft, was at the World Juniors, mostly in a backup role, but he's had a ton of exposure and has to be one of those goaltenders that's probably been overanalyzed more than any, really, in recent years coming out of the OHL.
Yeah, he's such an intriguing prospect because he's obviously been a mega talent in terms of his ability. But, when we talk about goalies, it always comes back to size, and him not being the 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" behemoth that a lot of NHL teams are looking for, it does change the draft stock. But if you're a player of his size and you're as good as he is, I think he's proven not only is he worth being drafted, he's probably worth going high among the goalies this year. And I think that's what teams are going to be weighing at this point. Obviously, you look at guys, Dustin Wolf was the last round, but he won every major award and played all the big minutes. Very similar. Jack Ivankovic, he's kind of following that trend line a little bit. This year, he's going to probably be the number 1 for Team Canada at the under-18s. He was the backup again last year, but I think how much Hockey Canada appreciates his game does speak to the scouts in terms of, hey, they keep going to this guy for the biggest moments. And so I'm excited to see how he performs, because I do think with the younger roster, Canada maybe isn't going to be as loaded as we thought they could be coming into this draft. So he probably will get some good work in this tournament. But if he's able to backstop them to a very impressive showing, I think it improves his draft stock and it makes him an even more attractive player, because the pedigree is certainly there, the ability is there. The only thing that isn't is prototypical NHL size. But again, players like him can overcome that with their performances.
Chris, appreciate the time, appreciate the insight, and we'll talk to you down the road and probably see you in Los Angeles.
Sounds great, guys. Thanks for having me. Really, really fun to be here, and congratulations to all the players picked.
Chris Peters from Flow Hockey joining us here as the 2025 OHL priority selection continues, and of course, countdown to the 2025 National Hockey League entry draft as well. Of course, it's